everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Heart to Heart. This is a IGTV and now newly branded YouTube series started by myself, Dr. Breen Mohammed, and my partner in crime, Dr. Misha Gupta, where we talk to today's physicians about their journeys through medicine, how they've got started on social media, and really just learning about them as people. So today I know we always introduce like every person like this, but literally I'm so excited to have our next guest with us, Dr. Amy Shah, who has been my mentor on social media literally since I got started. I still can't believe I am where I am today without her. And so it is an honor for me to introduce her. Dr. Shah graduated magna cum laude from Cornell University's world-renowned School of Nutrition, and then she went on to receive her medical doctorate with distinction, as well as her training from Cornell, Harvard, and Columbia. She is a physician. She's a mentor. She's an expert on intermittent fasting. She clearly is a social media extraordinaire, and now she's a newly minted author of the upcoming book that's being released tomorrow. I'm so effing tired.
I see it.
And you also might know her as The Fasting MD on Instagram. Welcome, Dr. Amy Shah. Applause.
Thank you, ladies, so much for having me on your amazing show. I honestly watch it. I think it's excellent. So good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. So to get started, Amy, I mean, we ask all of our guests this. We just want to have you share with us your journey through medicine, how you were able to get started, and what really led you to the phenomenal woman that you are.
I think we all have it in us. Breen and Amisha, like we were both just talking off air about how, it's crazy how many opportunities come about when you kind of step into your own self and not worry about fitting into any kind of box or go on the path that everyone's told us to go on. As physicians, in our whole entire life, we've kind of had a path laid out before us, and it's almost unheard of to get off that path. And even up till about 5 years ago, it was really hard to get off that path unless you decided to go to Hollywood or, there's a few different things you could do, but really it was clinical medicine, it was academic medicine, or it was quit your job. So I think the more I was able to say, I am who I am, I like what I like, I know what I know, and flaws and all, I'm going to help people in the way I best know how. That's basically when I started to grow both on social media and as a person, really in my field, and that's how I decided to write a book, because somebody said, well, you have these ideas, why don't you write a book? And at first I was really scared and had a lot of imposter syndrome, and I got rejected a couple of times, so that did not help. But then I started to just say, you know what, I'm leaning into this, I'm doing it. And I can't believe that it's out now. So as of when this comes out, it will be out into the world. So I'm super excited.
That's honestly, it's so amazing and inspiring. Obviously, you inspire Breen and myself and so many people on social media. And I think, I posted something about this today about like not fitting in someone else's mold, like breaking the molds that, society has defined and creating your own. And you're such a prime example of that, to women, to people in medicine, to entrepreneurs, to young girls, and I think that is such a strong message. And especially like you were saying, it's been difficult in medicine in previous years, before kind of this boom and comfort level of, Twitter and Instagram and now TikTok and Clubhouse. And so what, when you decided to really lean into it, as you mentioned, and expand on Instagram, what drove you, to follow that passion, and how are you able to kind of integrate that into your life? And what advice do you have to others who want to do the same?
Yeah, actually the first break or the first glimmer of this happened about 10 years ago. I was feeling burned out and exhausted, which is why, the stimulus behind the book. And I didn't know what to do about it. And I had this horrible car accident, which I talk about in the book and it made me slow down because we all have these ideas in our head, but we're so busy with our everyday life that we can't really act on them or don't give ourselves permission like to slow down or act on them because we're afraid like, okay, what if I slow down, I can't do all the things that I'm supposed to be doing. And I started to listen to podcasts after that. And I started to read more and write more because I knew that there was something wrong, but I didn't know what it was. And I heard a podcast. It was called the Rich Roll Podcast. And he had a guest on that was the editor, no, that was a creator of Mind Body Green, which is a wellness website. And they were talking about wellness and why, mind body health is so important. And they said, well, if anybody knows anything about wellness, you know about Mind Body Green, and you're accepting submissions, right, Jason? And he asked the CEO, and they said, oh yeah. And I remember that day, I was like, well, maybe I should just start writing, and maybe I can try to submit something to this. And maybe that's my creative side. And so I did it, and honestly, it was a couple of days later that I got the email, and it was just a simple email that the editor-in-chief, she said, oh, sounds like a cool, blog post. We'd be happy to post it. Do you have like a website and bio? And of course, I didn't have any of those things. But it really, in my mind, gave me permission to start to say, okay, well, maybe I can use this as my kind of personal contribution to the medical world, something different, something that is more me, and talking about my own journey through burnout and fatigue. So that's kind of how it started. And then, of course, they asked me for my website, and they didn't have one. They asked me for, what are your social handles? They didn't have anything. And it wasn't until a few years later that I actually established all that, so that because I was contributing regularly, and people were like, oh, well, do they just call your office? And I'm like, no, don't call my office. There's nothing that I can do for them like through the phone. But I could set up some educational sites and all that stuff. So that's how the whole thing started. And then social media, and I tell Ambreen this all the time, social media never started taking off until I got real, and I stopped being just like Dr. Amy Shah and started being like me as a person, because that's what a lot of people want to see, both doctors and non-doctors. They want to see the real you, the one that has opinions. And, obviously you don't want to go too crazy, especially if you're someone who has off the wall opinions, because it is social media, but being vulnerable, sharing your losses, sharing the things that you care about, sharing why you do what you do, really, really did help me grow at that point.
And I think it's so interesting that you say that, because I remember, even having these conversations with you at the beginning. And one of the hardest parts that I thought was going to be for me was going to be establishing on social media was being vulnerable. Right.
Yeah.
And I always wondered, I kind of had this idea as to what doctors were on social media. And I was like, oh, anybody could do that, or, it's so easy to be an influencer. And then once you start your own thing and you start to share some of that stuff, it's hard. It's really, really hard. But then you start to get those messages back from people. And I know Amisha and I have talked about this a lot, where, people start to resonate with what you're saying, and they feel inspired by what you're saying because you've shared your losses and you shared some of your wins. But it's really those losses that people actually want to hear about, and how you've grown from that stuff. And it's okay to share that stuff. I don't think that people understand being vulnerable, even though it's hard, it's actually significantly therapeutic. That's the experience that I've had with it. And I feel so good that I can help someone else, even if it's one person, by being vulnerable and open,
Absolutely. Your vulnerable posts are totally on the mark, because it makes you not feel sorry for you, but it makes you identify with it and say oh yeah, I've been there too. So that's kind of what I always tell people on social media. Also, I tell people, if there's someone listening or watching, they say, well, social media is for people posting pictures of themselves, in pretty dresses, and it can be, and that's totally cool. But it can also be a vehicle for you to get out the message, whether it's a message of, better health, whether it's better message of better mindset, or, whatever it is, it doesn't need to be in the one particular thing that you kind of equate with social media. Like TikTok, I have to admit that, in the beginning, I said, this is not my thing. I can't even, and I totally judged it before I realized, like, oh, there's such amazing content on there. There's creators that are doing really amazing things. And so that's how I feel about social media in general. Like, yes, there's going to be people that you don't identify with, but that's real life. Like you don't identify with everyone in real life, and you don't have to be the person advertising shoes if you don't want to. You can be someone who's talking about the things that matter to you.
Right, absolutely. So, so you kind of touched on this a little bit, but obviously people know you on Instagram as being this, expert on intermittent fasting and wellness and nutrition. So how are you able to really get into that space, and why do you think it's important to share that message with other people?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I used to say all the time is you have to work on mindset, you have to eat for gut health. And in my book, I talk about, gut health, mindset, circadian rhythms. And what people really picked up on is they said, okay, I've heard the gut health piece, I've heard the mindset piece, exercise, sleep, but I've never heard this circadian rhythms kind of intermittent fasting piece. And so what happened is, by default, because people were interested and because they didn't know enough, I became their source of information. Like, what are circadian rhythms? Why should we be fasting overnight? What are the different types? So I started to educate on that subject, mostly because that's what people wanted to hear from me, and not because I actually don't do any long fasting. I don't do and it's not bad or good. It's like running a marathon or doing an ultra marathon. It's not for everyone. So for me, I'm just not someone who regularly does longer fasts, even though, people can argue with certain types of fasting can be very beneficial. I talk about very natural, biological, and evolutionarily programmed fasting, which is like overnight fasting, so that you're not eating 16 hours a day like the Western world. You are maybe eating 12 hours a day, which biologically and evolutionarily makes so much more sense. And eating an earlier dinner rather than eating late into the night and then skipping all your meals the next day. So I want to take it away from like a diet culture to make it more of part of this like healthy lifestyle that you're already doing, but you want to add that next piece. And circadian rhythms, we have 80% of our genes have a circadian pattern, and the gut bacteria that live in, the gut bacteria that rule our immune system also have a circadian pattern. And so basically simple things I talk about in the book and I talk about on my Instagram is like, and you guys know, like getting sunlight directly into your retina. So it goes to your suprachiasmatic nucleus, and the central circadian clock can talk to the peripheral clocks, and everything just works better. They're like, they communicate and say, okay, it's time for metabolism now, time to turn off the repair, renewal mode. And same thing at night, when your melatonin binds to your brain, it also binds to your pancreas and tells it to turn down the insulin and enzyme production, and that it's time to get ready for repair renewal. And if you eat late into the night, you're basically waking yourself up in the middle of the night and trying to do a complicated computational problem. Yes, you're going to make mistakes and you're going to feel groggy, and the next day you're going to feel like crap. So basically going with the very, very simple intermittent fasting piece of circadian fasting is what I talk about.
Yeah, I think that so many people also are looking for this kind of integrative whole body wellness, which you do such a great job of on your Instagram account. And now with your new book, I'm excited to read it and see kind of like head to toe what everything is about, because, obviously as clinicians, we know the science, we keep up to date on evidence-based literature, but, mental health, body health, wellness, this is all integrated into our lifestyles, right? And I think you do such a great job on your social media pages about promoting that and not not everything is divided into its own categories. Everything is related. And so, I have to say congratulations again for your new book coming out, because I really do think it's going to help a lot of people understand these connections, between mind, body, soul, metabolism, wellness, all of it.
Yeah, thank you. I tried to make it the way that I would want to present it from a medical standpoint. So we talk about hormones. So basically what I do is like, after I talk about my story, I actually talk about hormones, like what are hormones? Because I think, us in medical world, we don't even really know all these details. Like, what are hormones? Like, how do they work? And so I kind of went into the fact that they're chemical messengers. They're kind of like cars on a highway, and your body is like a highway. And just because you feel tired does not mean that it's your adrenals that are fatigued. It doesn't, or that you have a thyroid, problem that is undiagnosed. It means that there is an accident or a backup in somewhere, and you're getting all the symptoms. The HPA axis is all connected. It's a highway. And so kind of getting into the side of things that maybe, people don't really understand, because all they hear is lay media talking to them. And I think we deserve a voice in educating people too. So yeah, thanks for that.
No, definitely. And I think educating people in a language that is understandable, right? Because I think that's the biggest thing, is how do we portray this message? How do we inform, and how do we, just, if people want to know, how do we get them that knowledge without making it so complex? And so I do. Oh, go ahead, Umbreen.
I will just say it makes a difference when it comes from a trained physician.
Yeah, I agree.
Makes a difference, Amy. Like,
and
this is not some like weird functional medicine that like no one understands. Like, adrenal fatigue is like, what is that, right? But the fact that you're explaining how things work and you're a physician, like, I'm sorry to say, guys, that makes a difference.
It does. I mean, we feel like, I don't always want to toot our horns, but when you're talking about, you guys, like, how the heart functions. So when you tell someone, hey, this food or this practice is going to cut down heart disease by 20%, it's not like you're just reading some statistics or like reading a magazine. You actually look at hearts. You've been in, you work with hearts, you work with patients. I think there's something to be said. I feel like in the lay media, there is this thought that physicians are just out of touch with real people, and that somehow we have some affiliation, all of us have some affiliation with pharma, and it's just not the case. And I think we have a PR problem. We need to kind of get out there and say, like, no, we're here. Actually, we're probably the most likely to do things for you out of the goodness of our heart. And we don't have ulterior interests. Now, of course, there's bad doctors, there's bad lawyers, there's bad artists, there's bad everything. But for the most part, we need to change our portrayal in the media. And you guys do such a great job, because you talk to all these different kinds of doctors and talk about very, very like topics that even non-physicians can understand. But I think that's why we need to be here. We need to be talking. We need to be educating, because people are on here, and people are on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and, TikTok, and they're learning their information from these places. And if we don't want our reputations to be ruined, we need to start to represent ourselves and help each other like we are right now. I think one of the biggest things we can do is, like, if you see some good information or you see someone doing a good job, like, promote them, talk about them. And I think that's something that we talked about too, Umbreen, is like, I think part of a lot, getting information out there is promoting the people that you think are doing a good job, or telling them that they're doing a good job, or telling others about it. I think that's the way we kind of grow the right information and squash all of the kind of quack stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. So Amy, it's been amazing having you here. Obviously, we're big fans of yours, and we congratulate you on your new book. To everybody who's watching, go get it. It'll be out by the time this video is out. Again, it's called I'm So Effing Tired by Dr. Amy Shah. There it is right there on the screen.
Perfect.
And so my publisher is like, every time you do anything, you have to have the book like front and center. I'm like, I can't do that. I'm just going to hold it up a couple of times and that should be good. It's so weird to be like, oh, let me put a table with my book. That's so random. Anyways, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Is there anything else you'd like to leave our audience with today?
Just thankful to Dr. Muhammad and Dr. Gupta for having me. And I really, really value your time and your expertise. So thanks.
Oh, right back at you. Thank you so much for joining us on Heart to Heart today. And to everyone out there watching, see you next week. Thank you.